I never imagined I would find myself living in someone else's house again, especially not in my husband's childhood bedroom, surrounded by walls that seemed to remember him more intimately than I ever could. Life has a way of stripping your choices down to the bone. Our apartment ceiling had sprouted black mold like a spreading bruise. The landlord shrugged and mumbled about renovations someday. And Ethan promised me his parents' house would only be temporary. 2, maybe 3 months, tops, he said, pressing his hand reassuringly over mine while we stood under the sagging plaster. We'll save, we'll get back on our feet. Mom won't mind. She loves order, you'll see. I wanted to believe him. But when Ruth opened the door to greet us, wiping her hands on a folded dish towel as though our arrival had smudged her routine, I felt the first knot of unease twist in my chest. Shoes in the mudroom, she said automatically, though Ethan had barely stepped inside. She hugged him with brisk efficiency, then turned to me. Her lips brushed my cheek. Not quite a kiss, not quite a refusal either. You'll be comfortable here, she added, though her eyes didn't linger on me long enough to mean it. Behind her, Harold gave a polite nod from the living room, his crossword open and untouched in his lap, as though his true job was to occupy the armchair. And then she led us upstairs, her footsteps quick, Ethan's slower, mine hesitant. The moment I stepped into his old bedroom, something in me stiffened. It wasn't the room itself, it looked ordinary enough. A bed pushed neatly against the corner. A wooden dresser standing sentinel at the far wall. A brass lamp with a chipped shade. Faded wallpaper, stripes of cream, and blue peeling slightly near the window. But the stillness carried weight, like the pause between breaths. The chair by the window bothered me most. It was angled outward, facing the yard instead of the desk or the bed. A position not chosen for use, but for watching. It gave the sense that someone had been sitting there just minutes before we arrived, waiting for us to notice. The smell hit me next. Lemon cleaner, sharp and medicinal, seeping from the floorboards and walls. I coughed lightly, but Ethan only grinned. Mom must have scrubbed all day, he said, dropping his duffel bag onto the bed. He didn't notice the way my hand hovered just above the dresser, my fingertips reluctant to touch the surface, afraid it might feel warm, as if it had already been touched by someone else. That first night, I unpacked slowly. I placed my ceramic ring dish, the one with the tiny chip on its rim, onto the dresser. My lotion bottle, the paperback I'd been reading, my hairbrush. Small things, anchors from our apartment to make this place feel less like someone else's story and more like mine. When I climbed into bed, I checked the dresser one last time. Everything was still there, still mine. But in the morning, the lotion bottle had been turned sideways, the label pressed toward the wall. I froze in the act of reaching for it. Ethan was already tugging on his tie in front of the mirror. Did you move this? I asked, trying to sound casual. Move what? He glanced over, confused. The lotion. I left it facing out. He shrugged, adjusting his collar. Probably Mom. She can't help herself. She likes things neat. He said it with such automatic affection that I didn't bother pushing. But neatness was folding towels and wiping counters, not rotating a bottle precisely 90 degrees. The second night, I tested myself. I left my sweater folded at the foot of the bed. I woke before dawn, reached for it, and found empty sheets. My stomach lurched. After searching, I discovered it hung in the closet, sleeves aligned perfectly, as though it had never been casually draped in the first place. Ethan's explanation was the same. She's helping. She probably thought you wanted it put away. He kissed my forehead and rushed off to work, leaving me alone with the creeping certainty that this wasn't help. It was correction. By the end of the first week, the corrections grew bolder. The chair by the window inched closer to the bed each morning. The dresser drawers, which I knew I had pushed shut, gaped open by an inch. My book, left face down with the spine showing, would be rotated and closed neatly with the bookmark aligned just so. Even my hairbrush ended up on the desk instead of the nightstand, the bristles brushed clean as though used, and then wiped of evidence. Individually, I could excuse them, but together, they whispered a different story. You don't belong here. Not the way you are. I decided to speak to Ruth. I found her in the hall folding towels into sharp, immaculate squares. Have you been in our room? I asked carefully. She didn't pause. Of course. I only wanted to help you feel settled. I hesitated. I'd rather. This house likes order, she interrupted, her voice soft but final. It's easier when everything is in its place. The way she said it unsettled me more than the words themselves. The house likes order. Not her. The house. As if it had preferences, rules, expectations. Before I could press her, Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, and Ruth's smile shut the door on the conversation. That night, I decided to test reality. I arranged the dresser deliberately. The ring dish with the chip facing left. The moisturizer with the label outward. My book laid flat with the title clear. I snapped a photo with my phone, the flash catching against the glass. Then I slid into bed, heart pounding with anticipation. In the morning, the chip faced right. The label pointed toward the wall. The book rotated 90 degrees. I showed Ethan the before and after photos. His frown deepened. You probably moved them without noticing, he said. You're tired. Stressed. Don't drive yourself crazy. He kissed my hair and left for work, his footsteps fading down the stairs. But I knew what I had seen. I knew what I had felt. The room was shifting, piece by piece, remaking itself around me. And as I sat on the edge of the bed with the photo still glowing in my hand, one thought sank its claws into my mind. It wasn't Ruth. It was the room itself. The second week in that house blurred together, a loop of mornings where I woke up already anxious, scanning the dresser before my feet even hit the floor. I tried to tell myself it was Ruth. It had to be. Who else could it be? Every little change, the rotated bottles, the open drawers, the moved chair, could be explained by her obsessive tidying. But the certainty I tried to build in my mind crumbled a little more each day. One morning, I woke to find my wedding ring not in the dish where I had left it, but centered on the pillow beside my head, as though someone had placed it there deliberately while I slept. I gasped, clutching it tight in my fist. When I asked Ethan, his expression flickered between confusion and irritation. Maybe you took it off in your sleep, he said. You toss and turn. You don't even realize sometimes. I don't, I insisted. I never have. My voice shook. It was right next to my head, Ethan. Like someone wanted me to see it. He rubbed his face with both hands. You're tired, he said again, the phrase he used like a shield whenever I brought it up. Stop worrying. Mom's just particular. But I noticed he didn't look at Ruth the same way at breakfast. His smile was smaller, his eyes guarded. She, of course, acted perfectly normal, sliding his plate across the table, pancakes cut into neat squares, butter melting in careful rivulets. She didn't meet my eyes, but I felt her awareness like heat. That afternoon, I decided to test her. I left the bedroom door locked when I went downstairs. I listened for the sound of her footsteps, the clink of dishes in the sink, her voice humming lightly as she dusted. Hours later, when I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the arrangement on the dresser had changed anyway. My book lay open to a chapter one hadn't reached yet. My ring dish was rotated so the chip faced away. The chair had crept closer to the bed again. I stood there trembling, my keys still clutched in my hand. Either Ruth had a spare key, or it wasn't her. And somehow, both possibilities terrified me. That night, I told Ethan I couldn't sleep. I lay awake long after he drifted into heavy breathing, staring at the faint glow of the dresser in the low lamplight. Every creak of the house made me stiffen. At 2 in the morning, I heard it again, the faintest shuffle of movement. I held my breath. The doorknob twitched. The door cracked open, just an inch, just enough for a sliver of hallway light to cut across the carpet. I expected Ruth's silhouette. Instead, there was nothing. The gap yawned empty. Then, so slowly it made my skin crawl, the chair by the window shifted. I heard the scrape of wood against wood, though no one touched it. Inch by inch, it turned, its legs angling closer to the bed. My throat closed, but I didn't scream. I couldn't. I lay frozen until the light disappeared and the door clicked shut again. In the morning, Ethan groaned when I shook him awake to see. The chair moved, I whispered. I heard it. He sat up reluctantly, rubbing his eyes, staring at the chair angled toward us. You probably bumped it yesterday, he muttered. But his voice lacked conviction, and when I pushed the chair back against the wall, he didn't help. That day, I searched the room for answers. I pulled open every drawer, checked the closet, even tapped on the walls like I expected them to hollow back at me. I found nothing but dust, hangers, and the faint smell of lemon cleaner embedded in the wallpaper. Still, when I glanced at the photos I had taken of my setup, comparing them to the current state of the dresser, the differences were undeniable. It wasn't just things being moved, it was things being corrected, altered with intention. When Ruth saw me that evening, she tilted her head slightly, like she could sense the defiance in me. "Are you adjusting?" she asked, her voice smooth, almost gentle. "I'd adjust faster if people stayed out of my room," I replied before I could stop myself. Ethan flinched at my tone, but Ruth's smile didn't falter. "Oh, darling," she said softly, setting down the dish towel she'd been folding. "The house doesn't like disorder. I'm only helping you fit in." Fit in. The words clung to me long after she walked away. That night, I doubled my precautions. I taped the edge of the door with a thin strip of clear tape, high enough Ruth might not see it. If the door opened, the tape would tear. I also placed a hairpin between the hinge and the wood, a tiny marker. Then I lay down, heart pounding, waiting. At 2:17 a.m., the lemon cleaner scent slid under the door, sharp enough to sting. The knob twisted. The tape whispered apart. I held my breath, every nerve screaming. The door opened. The chair scraped. My ring dish shifted with a faint tap. I squeezed my eyes shut, pretending to be asleep. I felt the weight of someone, standing by the bed. But when I forced myself to peek, just for a heartbeat, there was no one. Only the chair, turned fully toward me now, closer than it had ever been. By morning, the evidence was there. Broken tape, displaced pin, moved objects. I showed Ethan, desperate for him to understand. He stared at the torn tape, the chair, then at me. His expression was unreadable. "You need to stop," he whispered, as if afraid someone might hear. "You're making it worse." "Worse," I echoed, my voice trembling. "Ethan, something is happening in this room. It's not just your mom. It's not me losing my mind. The room is changing itself." He didn't answer. He kissed my forehead with the tenderness of a man already retreating, then left for work. I sat alone, staring at the chair angled toward the bed, and realized something horrifying. It wasn't just about moving things. It was about teaching me, correcting me, shaping me into something the room wanted. And if I didn't figure out what that was soon, I might never get to choose who I was again. The third week in that house felt like drifting through a fog that thickened with each sunrise. I had stopped unpacking the rest of our boxes. What was the point when nothing stayed where I left it? Every object I owned seemed borrowed, temporary, adjusted into the house's rhythm the moment my back was turned. One morning, I found a cardigan folded neatly at the foot of the bed. Soft, pale blue, pearl buttons. Except it wasn't mine. I had never owned anything like it. I shook Ethan awake, clutching it in both hands. "Is this yours?" I demanded. He blinked groggily. "It looks like one my mom used to wear." "Why?" "Because it was on our bed, waiting for me." He frowned, half asleep, half irritated. Maybe she left it there by mistake. But the way he avoided my eyes told me he didn't believe his own words. I shoved it into the closet, burying it behind my things. But later that day, when I came back upstairs, it was hanging alone on the door, sleeves aligned perfectly straight. That was when I started searching. I waited until Ruth went to the market, Harold disappeared to the pharmacy, and Ethan was at work. I closed the bedroom door behind me and began to comb through every corner. The dresser drawers yielded nothing unusual. My clothes, neatly folded, though I had left them messy. The closet, however, gave me pause. Behind Ethan's old suits and my jackets, pressed against the wall, I found a shoebox. Inside, Polaroid photographs. I flipped through them with trembling hands. The room looked the same, but the details were wrong. In one photo, the chair sat closer to the bed, a woman with dark hair sitting in it, her face turned toward the camera. In another, the dresser bore different bottles of perfume, different books stacked neatly. A chipped ring dish, like mine, but not mine, sat on the edge. The dates scrawled in the corners chilled me. 2014, 2016, 2018. Years before I met Ethan. And every photo showed a woman in this room. Never the same woman twice. When Ethan came home, I tried to show him. I pulled the box out, hands shaking. But when I lifted the lid, the photos were gone. Empty cardboard stared back at me. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You have to stop this," he said. "You're scaring yourself." "I saw them," I whispered. "Women. In this room. Before me." He didn't answer. He just pushed the box aside and kissed the top of my head, as though affection could erase proof. That night, I dreamed of the chair. I saw a woman sitting in it, her hands folded, her cardigan the same pale blue as the one I had found. She didn't look at me. She looked past me, to the bed, where another woman slept. Her lips moved soundlessly. When I jerked awake, the chair was 2 feet closer than it had been when I'd closed my eyes. I screamed. Ethan jolted upright, demanding what was wrong. I pointed, shaking. He rubbed his eyes, groaned, dragged the chair back to the wall. "It's a chair," he muttered. "Stop giving it power." But it wasn't just a chair anymore. The next day, Ruth caught me in the hall. Her smile was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "You're restless," she said softly. "What do you mean?" My voice was brittle. "You don't sleep. You don't let the house teach you." "The house?" I snapped. "Or you?" Her expression didn't change. "The house needs order. Some women learn faster than others." My skin crawled. "And the ones who don't, they leave," she said simply, turning back toward the kitchen as though that ended the conversation. But that night, I proved to myself it wasn't just Ruth. I set my phone to record, camera propped against the lamp, angled at the dresser. I lay down, pretending to sleep, Ethan's even breathing beside me. At 2:14 a.m., the doorknob turned. The door creaked open, but Ruth never entered. The chair moved on its own. I saw it clearly on the screen the next morning, slow, scraping inches across the carpet. The bottles on the dresser rotated one by one. My ring dish turned, the chip disappearing from sight. And then, this was what made bile rise in my throat. The reflection in the mirror shifted. For a split second, it wasn't me lying in the bed. It was another woman, dark hair spilling across the pillow, her face turned away. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking so violently I nearly cracked the screen. When I showed Ethan, the video wouldn't play. Black screen, error message. "It didn't record," he said, handing it back to me. "You must have dreamed it." But I knew what I had seen. That night, I sat in the chair instead of the bed. I wanted to prove something, to myself, to the house, to Ruth, to Ethan. I wasn't sure. At 2:30 a.m., the air grew heavy. My skin prickled. In the mirror, my reflection wavered. For an instant, I saw myself in a cardigan I didn't own. Lipstick a shade darker than I ever wore. My hands folded neatly, obediently, just like the women in the Polaroids. And then the reflection smiled. But I didn't. By the 4th week, I felt like I was unraveling thread by thread. The house didn't just change objects anymore, it was changing me. I woke each morning unsure of what I had done the night before. My toothbrush was dry when I swore I'd brushed. My phone was charging on the wrong side of the bed. A cardigan I didn't own appeared folded neatly on the chair, and when I pulled it on in a daze, Ethan said, "That looks good on you," without noticing it wasn't mine. When I tried to tell him, he shook his head. "You're exhausted. You're mixing things up." He kissed me, but his eyes were elsewhere. I wanted to scream, to shake him until he saw, but it was easier for him not to see, and easier for me to stop trying. That night, I woke to a sound I hadn't heard before, humming. A soft tune, low, steady, coming from the corner of the room. I turned my head slowly, terrified of what I might see. The chair was angled toward the bed again, the cardigan draped across it. And though the chair was empty, the humming continued, vibrating in the walls. I clutched Ethan's arm, but he didn't stir. The tune threaded itself through my skull until I thought my mind might split. In the morning, the cardigan was gone. I went to Ruth in the kitchen, desperate, my voice sharper than I intended. "Why are you doing this to me?" She looked up from the sink, her hands dripping water, her expression maddeningly calm. "Doing what, dear?" "Leaving things in the room. Moving them. Bringing other people's things." She dried her hands slowly, folding the towel with precise corners. "You keep blaming me, but it isn't me you should be watching." My chest tightened. "Then who?" Her eyes lingered on me, cold and sharp. "Some women learn. Some don't. The house keeps what fits." "The house," I repeated. "It's a building, not." "It's older than you think," she cut in. "Older than me. It remembers. It teaches. You're only uncomfortable because you resist." My blood ran cold. What happened to the others? The women before me? She smiled faintly, almost pitying. "They left. That's what always happens. The house doesn't fight. It simply replaces." I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. "You're insane." "No, dear." Her voice was soft, matter-of-fact. Insane would be ignoring what the house wants. That night, I refused to sleep. I sat in the chair, daring it to move. At 2:30, the air shifted, colder than ice. My reflection in the window warped, showing a version of me I didn't recognize. Hair longer, lips painted in a shade I didn't own, cardigan buttoned to the throat. She looked at me with weary, obedient eyes. I lurched to my feet, but the reflection stayed seated, stayed smiling, stayed still. When I blinked, it was gone. The next morning, Ethan found me pale and shaking. "You need rest," he said. "You're seeing things." "I'm not," I shouted, startling us both. "It's the room. It's changing me." His jaw tightened. "If you can't handle being here, maybe you should leave for a while." The words cut deeper than any denial. "Leave?" I whispered. "So the house can replace me faster?" He didn't answer. He kissed my forehead, the gesture hollow, and left for work. I spent the day tearing through the closet, the dresser, the drawers. I found another Polaroid tucked under the bed frame. A woman sitting in the same chair, wearing the same cardigan, her hands folded in her lap. Her face blurred by the flash, but her posture familiar, too familiar. That night, when the chair scraped forward again, I didn't scream. I sat frozen as the cardigan draped itself over the backrest, sleeve by sleeve, as though invisible arms had laid it there for me. And I realized with a sick twist in my stomach that Ruth hadn't lied. The house wasn't fighting me. It was waiting. I woke that night before the clock struck 2, as though my body had learned the schedule better than my mind. Ethan slept beside me, his breath steady, his arm heavy across my waist. I lay still, watching the faint shape of the chair in the darkness, waiting for the scrape. It came. Slow, deliberate, wood dragging across carpet. I held my breath. The chair inched forward, turning toward the bed. Then the humming began, low and steady, like a lullaby sung through the walls. I squeezed my eyes shut, but when I opened them, the mirror above the dresser was glowing faintly. My reflection looked wrong. My face, but calmer, prettier, lips painted with a color I didn't own. My hands folded in my lap, though I knew they were clenched under the blanket. "Ethan," I whispered, shaking him. He stirred, groaned. "What is it now?" "Look." I pointed with a trembling hand. He sat up, blinking into the dark. For one blessed second, I thought he saw it. Then he shook his head. "It's a mirror. It's you. You're scaring yourself." I grabbed his wrist. "It's not me. It's showing me as it wants me. Don't you see?" The humming grew louder. Ethan covered his ears, grimacing. "What is that sound?" Before I could answer, the door opened. Ruth stood in the gap, framed by the faint glow of the hall. She wasn't surprised to see us awake. Her voice was calm. "You'll feel better if you stop fighting." "Get out," I hissed. She stepped inside, ignoring me. Her eyes lingered on Ethan. "She doesn't understand yet," Ruth said softly. "But she will. The house teaches." Ethan swung his legs off the bed, angry now. "Mom, enough. This has to stop." Ruth's smile was patient. "It doesn't stop, dear. It only settles when everything is in its place." I climbed out of bed, shaking so badly I thought my knees might buckle. "What happened to the other women?" I demanded. "The ones in the photographs? The ones before me?" Her eyes flicked toward the mirror. "They left. That's what happens when you can't belong." The reflection in the mirror shifted again. A woman I didn't recognize sat in the chair now, pale cardigan buttoned high, hands folded neatly. Then her face changed, blurred, sharpened, until it was mine. My exact face, but she was smiling in a way I never had. "Do you see that?" I begged Ethan. He looked at the mirror, his mouth tightening. For a moment I thought he might say yes. Then he shook his head again. "It's just you. You're tired." "No," I whispered. My throat ached. "That's what it wants you to think." The humming grew so loud I thought my skull would crack. The lamp flickered, the dresser rattled. Ruth's voice was steady in the chaos. "Let it change you. That's easier. You'll last longer here if you fit." "Fit into what?" I shouted. "Another version of me you can control?" She tilted her head, her polite smile never faltering. "Into the house. Into order." I grabbed the ring dish from the dresser and hurled it at the mirror. Glass shattered, spraying across the floor. The humming stopped like a needle lifted from a record. Ethan shouted my name. Ruth gasped, one sharp intake of breath that sounded almost like anger, almost like triumph. In the silence that followed, I realized my chest was heaving, my hands cut from flying shards. The mirror lay in pieces, my warped reflection scattered across the floor. And then, very slowly, the chair moved again, scraping forward inch by inch, though no one touched it. Ethan backed away. His face had gone pale. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. "Mom," he whispered. Ruth only smiled. "It wants her," she said simply. "Not me. Not you. Her." I grabbed Ethan's arm. "We have to leave. Now." He didn't move. He looked between me and his mother, torn in two. I shook him hard. "Ethan, if we stay, I won't be me anymore. Please." The chair scraped closer. Another reflection flickered in the shards on the floor. Me, but calmer, folded, erased. Finally, Ethan grabbed my hand. "Go," he said. We ran. Down the hall, down the stairs, Ruth's voice following us like a prayer. "You can run, but you'll carry it with you. You'll carry it until you give in." We burst into the night air. My chest burned, my heart racing. Ethan pulled me toward the car. We didn't look back until the engine started. In the rearview mirror, I saw the upstairs window glowing faintly. The chair sat framed in the glass, turned toward us as if watching. For just a heartbeat, I thought I saw myself sitting in it, smiling that wrong smile, waving goodbye. I looked away, gripping Ethan's hand until my knuckles turned white. He drove in silence. We didn't speak, didn't dare. But even as the house disappeared behind us, the faint scent of lemon cleaner clung to my clothes. And when I opened my fist, I found a shard of the ring dish pressed into my palm, though I hadn't picked it up. The chip faced inward. I stared at it until my vision blurred. Tell me, if a house decides who you are, can you ever truly leave it behind? Or do you just carry its version of you wherever you go?